Check 1, 2.
Morning. I'd like to call the February 11th Kankakee County Board meeting to order. Today's invocation is from Jim Byrne.
If we could just bow our heads and give a moment of silence for Jim Tripp, who we lost just a few short weeks ago, who graced us with his presence for many years. Thank you.
Thanks. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I could, Mr. Henderson, can I get a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Mr. Washington.
Present.
Mr. Lejes. Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess.
Present.
Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk.
Present.
Mr. Snipes.
Present.
Mr. Byrne.
Present.
Mr. Seroy.
Present.
Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber.
Present.
Mrs. Peters.
Present.
Mr. Payton.
Present.
Mrs. Parker. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Ritter.
Here.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Present.
Mr. Fairfield.
Present.
Mr. Zenz.
Present.
Ms. Haas.
Present.
Mr. Carrico.
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo.
Present.
Mr. Featherling.
Present.
Mr. Wheeler.
Present. We have a quorum. Under public commentary, we'll be back at the microphone in the back there. First up is, we have a total of 15 minutes. Excuse me. Nathan Wozniak from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Thank you. Didn't quite make the trip from Minneapolis. That's our business address. I only came an hour and a half away from Aurora, Illinois. But my name is Nathan Wozniak. I work with US Solar. We are one of the solar companies that has had a number of applications in the county for special use permits. The one in which I'm here today to talk about is ZBA case 18-50. The previous county board meeting, this application was denied, and we would respectfully request that in consideration of Robert's Rules of Order, a motion be made to reconsider and then approve this request. We find many similarities between this application and project as others that have been approved previously by the county. And just to refresh your memory, for those of you who were in attendance and voted on this, this project, USS Lehigh, is in Pilot Township. It was located on two sides of our neighboring residential property, which we understand requires due consideration. So the standard in which the zoning board and then county board made the determination to deny was standard 2 of section 17, 3F4 of the ordinance about the enjoyment of property, neighboring property. Now, from other projects in applications that have been approved in just as close, if not closer, proximity to residences, we would request that certain conditions be placed upon approval to set this back further and locate it only on one side of the property. This, in addition with the landscape screening, we find would be, as I mentioned, almost identical to previous approvals granted by the county. It was located approximately 500 feet from the nearest residential dwelling, and would be consistent with other determinations made by the board. So thank you for your time, and we hope you reconsider this. Thanks.
The next up is Brian Carson from Chicago.
Hello. I didn't actually plan on speaking this morning, so I'm sorry if I'm not making a lot of sense, but we are here for the Chicago Religious Leadership Network and also represent the Interfaith Coalition for Detained Immigrants. We're here to oppose the expansion of the Kankakee jail to house more immigration concerns, and we represent a large group of local Chicago area churches, synagogues, faith groups who are working for more compassionate and saner immigration policy than what's currently being offered by the U.S. government and the administrations. Expanding the ability to detain more immigrants becomes almost an insurance that more and more people beyond the 40,000 that are now in detention will be placed in detention and moved probably through here and out of the area. Our groups visit jails in the area in McHenry and here in Kankakee and meet with many of these many of the detainees here, and are quite concerned about their welfare, about the families that are being torn apart. We must remember that right now there are more people on the move in the world than there ever has been at any time, even in the 20th century, during the massive wars that we suffered. The people on the move here, because of the zero tolerance enacted by the U.S. government, are almost assured of, if they show up and ask for asylum, that they're going to be placed in detention for possibly a period of years. Sometimes it's only a few weeks. Frequently it's a period of years. And would not like to see Jerome Cone's detention center become more than just a place where people come out and become deportation center, but an actual detention center would expand the facilities here in Illinois. And this is something that we don't like to see, and what faith people don't like to see. And there are more compassionate ways to make sure that our borders are safe and that people coming in can ask for asylum. It's part of our requirement as humans, and part of our just part of our family. We've almost everybody in this room probably has relatives or descendants that have made it here through asylum petition or come here escaping something horrible, and we don't offer that opportunity anymore, even though the times have never been worse. And I want to thank you for listening, and hope this will be considered.
Next is, excuse me, Sally Nader. That is pronounced correct. I apologize if it's not. Wilmette.
Yeah, Nader, that's right. I'm Sally Nader from Wilmette. I also, like Brian, am a member of the Chicago Religious Leaders Network, and within that group, I represent Congregation Hakafa. And like Brian, I am against any proposed expansion of the jail and against ICE contracts generally. I know from news reports that you have had an ICE contract since 2016. I'm sorry about that. I wish you didn't have that. I think I don't have to tell you that we have a broken immigration system. I think at some point it will be fixed. Someday it will be fixed. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday it will be fixed. And when that happens, I think you will be very glad that you did not expand the jail. I think it will make a big difference. I recently returned from Tornillo, Texas, where they're under public pressure. A ICE detention center was closed. And I want to point this out because it began small. It began with 350 children in June of 2018, and by December it had 2,800. And under public pressure, it closed. The last child left January 11th at 6:18 in the morning. I was there. You just don't want to get into this business. It's a really, really bad business. Thank you.
The final person is Julie McDonald from Kankakee.
Hi. So some of you, well, hopefully all of you have seen there's some cards on your desk. And those are cards that are from various congregations, just to explain those first. From Wellington Avenue United Church of Christ, from St. Ignatius High, from the Peace and Justice Students Club, from St. Matthew's Episcopal Churches of Evanston. Plus, there's some smaller cards that were collected at a rally that a group called Connect Kankakee held this fall. And we had about 100 of those cards in total. So we just thought we'd pass those. And then to address the fact that those cards were filled out, and there might be a little bit of clarification that Chairman Wheeler could make here now, is if can you assure us, as you have done once before, that the expansion part of our objection to the Jerome Combs Center, that has been relaxed, that is done, we're not expanding? Remember you said that at another meeting before.
It's inappropriate for me to respond to public comment.
Okay, I thought you stood up and spoke about it before. Okay, well, anyway, please note that we're not only against the expansion, whether or not that's still in the game or not, we're also against the just detention period and of immigrants. Last month, another resident of this county and of the group, Connect Kankakee, stood up and told you a story, but I know it was kind of noisy last month, so just a quick review. In December, 11 days before Christmas, ICE raided 2 restaurants in Indiana, and they arrested and brought to Jerome Combs 5 people. One of the people was the business owner, the restaurant owner, Jesus Cabrera. Let's see. And so again, he was brought here to Jerome Combs. A couple of us from Connect actually traveled to Indiana to interview the family. And because we were curious, who are these people that were brought here? We found out about it through a Chicago Trib article. The people that were apprehended and detained, turns out, were assets to their towns. They had lived and worked and raised their family for more than 15 years. They paid income taxes, sales taxes, payroll taxes. They were members of their churches, area chamber of commerce, and involved in school districts. Basically, people like you and me. And this is happening more and more. In 2017, there was a reported, and this is from Department of Homeland Security's own records, 171% rise in the share of deportations of people without criminal offenses compared to the prior year. So just being undocumented is not, to be clear, a criminal offense. It is a civil offense. And typically immigration infractions are misdemeanors. So why are we doing this? Jesus Cabrera poses no threat to the public. In my work with this group, Connect Kankakee, I've learned about spectrums of alternatives to detention. And Brian mentioned, these more sane alternatives. And that's what my group and many other groups advocate for. This is a national movement that is growing as ICE's tactics get more and more aggressive. So we are part of this national movement. We're advocating at all levels of government, not just this government, but be assured at the federal level as well. The alternatives to detention are programs that offer case management services and facilitate access to legal counsel, as well as safe and affordable housing. Alternatives to detention have high compliance rates and cost less than detention. ICE's own formal but now terminated family case management program had compliance rates of 99% with immigration requirements such as court hearings and immigration appointments. So again, why are we doing this? The Department of Homeland Security estimated in its congressional budget justification for fiscal year 2018 that the average cost per alternative to detention participant would be about $4.50 per day. Same records, according to DHS, it costs the taxpayers on average $133.99 per day to hold an adult immigrant in detention. The ICE pays our county only $80 per day. So neither this board nor Sheriff Downey have been able to show accounting for these ICE-specific costs. So I would, as board members, ask more questions about that. Can we really break out, is this the best plan for our county? Short-term and long-term. Is taking money from ICE the best business plan we can come up with? Since advocacy for immigration policy reform is at its height, this will ultimately affect the budget for ICE and its expensive mass detention agenda. What happens when we no longer have undocumented immigrants like Jesus Cabrera to imprison? Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, vacancy appointment. As Mr. Byrne mentioned, we did lose the longest serving board member in the, as anybody can tell, in the history of board members in Illinois, to this board, our friend Jim Tripp. Can't replace him, can't replace what he meant to this board, but we do have to fill the seat. And so in that effort, bringing forward Aaron Dunhill, who I did actually check with the county clerk to make sure he lives in the district. Things have happened. So we wanted to make sure that I was all buttoned up, and I obviously have had chances to talk to Aaron. He is the district manager for American Family Life Assurance Company. He's also a 3-time president of the Kankakee Rotary. I can tell you that he is a man of the utmost integrity. He holds dual citizenship, so he's a man of mystery around the world. Yeah. So he was born in Canada, but he is an American citizen, and so he holds dual citizenship. So I want to get that out there on the front end in case anybody thinks they're going to do an expose on some Facebook group somewhere. So we want to make sure that you guys knew his qualifications. He comes with my recommendation as somebody who's going to ask a lot of questions and really think things through and act in an ethical manner. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve this nomination. Mr. Zenz, a second. Mr. Fairfield. And is there any other questions for me about this appointment? Mr. Snipes?
So my understanding is he's going to be another Snipes on the board and ask questions.
There can never be another Snipes on the board. You know that. There's 2 ways I could have gone with that. Thank you. Mr. Kinzinger, yes.
How long has he been a member of Kankakee County or lived in Kankakee County?
I guess I would, well over 15 years. How long have you been here? 20 years since you got out of? Since 91.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Longer than Mr. Rowe, as he said, yes. So you got that going for you, which is nice. All righty, I guess we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Welcome to the board, Mr. Dunhill. If you could join us up here. Actually, I should mention that any board member who would like to sit up here between Mr. Eckhoff and Mr. Ritter could take this seat up in the front. If not, this will be your spot up here, Aaron, if you would join us to take the oath of office. I don't think that speaks poorly to you, so okay, I just
Raise your right hand. I state your name. Having been appointed to the office of County Board Member, District 24, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of County Board Member, District 24, to the best of my ability. Congratulations.
All right. Moving on, we have certificates of recognition. Daniel Hendrickson for 25 years in the county clerk's office.
He's not here today.
He's not here today. No, I think that's 25 years. You know, it's one of those. If I had $1 for every year, I'd have $25. Is that what we said earlier?
I keep trying to catch up to Mr. Washington.
You're not going to close that gap, but no, congratulations.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I'll bring your certificate back in a moment. Is that
No,
okay? You
that's
wanna make me
perfectly
walk?
fine. No, I don't want to have to get up again.
Okay, good. They have Dustin Brown, 20 years in the Sheriff's Department. Is Dustin here? Gloria Love from the Corrections Department, 15 years. You're here. Please join me over here. We have Christine Anderson from the Assessor's Office, 15 years.
I think Eric wants to say something.
Eric, would you like to say something at the mic back there? Oh, yeah. Yep.
You gotta be smarter than the microphone to get it to come down. Obviously, Chris has served in the department for 15 years, and she's served as the main point of contact to anyone who either comes to the counter or through the, over the phone. And she's done a tremendous job of being that face of the department, if you will, that first point of contact, which is a really important part of what we do to serve the public. Beyond that, a couple of years ago, I challenged my department to not only bring the issues to me, but also potentially bring a solution with them, so that they have a better understanding of what their role is. And I think Chris has shown the most growth of anybody in the department in that manner. So that speaks volumes to her understanding professionally. But the other thing that I would mention is when we hired a new employee a couple of years ago, she really did a lot to make him feel at home right away, and it helped him acclimate well to the department. So it speaks volumes about her professionally as well as personally, and I thank her for her 15 years of service, and I look forward to another 15 to 20 years more of working together with her. So thanks a lot, Chris, for everything that you do, and I look forward to working with you into the very distant future. Thank you.
We also have Kenneth Griffin from the Maintenance Department, 15 years. Kenny, you here? He's not here? Okay. He's out maintaining. All right, the minutes of the last meeting from January 8th. To motion to approve. Mr. Byrne, second. Mr. Featherly. Any questions, additions, deletions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to the claims report.
Mr. Chairman and members of the County Board, your Committee on County Claims would beg leave to report they have examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants payable out of the funds as follows. Highway Fund, $610,398.32. All other funds, $28,236.50. The total for the month of December 2018, $638,634.82. Out of the general fund, $1,275,442.01. All other funds, $4,236,561.04, for a total for the month of December 2018 of $5,512,003.05.
Alrighty, I need a motion to approve, please. Mr. Eckhoff, a second. Ms. Polk, this is any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under department reports, can you get those read into the record, please?
Absolutely. I'm working on it. The County Collector's Monthly Report for December 2018, total cash and bank and investments, $119,085.06. County Treasurer's Monthly Report for December 2018, total cash and investments, $119,085.06. The County Finance Report, total checking and cash and accounts, total of $11,541,962.32. The general fund deficit of $4,318,027.96. Coroner's Monthly Report for December 2018. 95 total calls, 10 coroner cases, 5 autopsies, 5 toxicology, 1 outside autopsy, 3 donations, 2 x-rays, 48 cremations, 4 incomplete. Total fees of $4,840.10. Circuit Clerk Cash Book for the month of December 2018. Total disbursed $269,739.66. Recorder's Monthly Report for December 2018. Disbursement fees paid to the County Treasurer $107,330.90. County Clerk's Monthly Report for December 2018. Total fees $32,745.98. Animal Control Monthly Report for December 2018. Total of $37,914, and the IPTIP Building Fund $308.91. The monthly Building Division report for November 2018, total permits of 60, fees of $23,124.50, total extra fees of $3,030 for a total of $26,154.50. The Building Division report for December 2018, total permits 25, fees of $31,796, total extra fees of $1,040 for a grand total $32,836. Monthly resolution list is on file. And the Iroquois Kankakee Regional Superintendent of Schools quarterly report for the quarter ending November 2018 is also on file.
Thank you. With that, I need a motion to approve. Mr. Legess, second. Mr. Byrne, any questions about any of those? It's a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Under committee presentations, resolutions, consent agenda, is there anything that needs to be removed and considered separately? Should have left you on. Mr. Snipes?
So that I don't belabor the point, because I'm in concert with number 31, I just need that word agriculture, I need that I in there. You see the A1 Agriculture District, there's an I missing, and since I'm in concert, I have to have it spelled correctly. Thank you.
Scribner's errors noted.
Concert.
Alrighty, is there anybody else have anything to be removed or added or corrected? Make a motion, Mr. Hess. Second. Mr. Kinzinger, that'll be a motion, or a scratch, I'll take a motion. Let's see here, that'll be, we need to read those into the record and then have a roll call vote, please.
The appointment of Ron Kinzinger to the Economic Alliance of Kankakee County Board. The appointment of Steve Lear to the Economic Alliance of Kankakee County Board. The appointment of Sam Payton to the Economic Alliance of Kankakee County Board. The appointment of Andrew H. Wheeler to the Economic Alliance of Kankakee County Board. The reappointment of Kenny Tatum to the Kankakee County Housing Authority Board. The reappointment of James Lamott to the Emergency Telephone System Board. The appointment of Charmaine Sims to the Grant Park Fire Protection District Board. The appointment of Eddie Kennedy to the Essex Township Fire Protection District Board. The 2019 revised travel expense form. Declaration and disposal of a surplus and unwanted vehicles for the Kankakee County Sheriff's Department. ZBA case 18-55, request for a text amendment to the County Code sections 121-3 and 121-99 amendment to the solar farm requirement of the A1 Agriculture District. The petitioner is Kankakee County. ZBA case 18-56, request for a variance to section 121-281, accessory structure in the front yard on a parcel generally situated in section 25 of Sumner Township. The petitioner is Carol Larson, property owner and applicant.
Alrighty, and that we have a motion and a second. That would be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Lejas.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunnell.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under PZA, a brief explanation, if I could just get the title read into the record, please, and then we'll try to explain it. We'll go into motions.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the chairman of the Kankakee County Board to acquire 13 River Lane in Kankakee, Illinois, and restore the site to a natural floodplain using FEMA grant funding.
So this is one that is a carryover from the previous board. PZA had voted to allow us to get the ball rolling on acquiring this piece of property. There's two separate instances. One was, this is the one that's right next to I-57 on River Lane. It's the house is continually flooded out, can't get insurance, can't be really repaired economically. And so we proceeded to apply for the grant funding to acquire to that, and then to basically have the structure removed, and then it becomes the county's property. We can never build on it. We can't have permanent structures, but it becomes an access point for people to utilize the river. So that process finally went through, Del, what, about a year and a half?
Yeah, we applied in 2016. We received the grant in 2000.
Why don't you, pick up the mic there,
We applied.
yeah.
We applied in 2016. We received the grant in about January of 2018.
Okay. And so this is not the one that was on 17 by, I still want to call it Skeeters, but the restaurant Fisherman's Wharf, back in that neighborhood, there was 4 properties back there, I believe.
4 on Laurel Lane.
On Laurel Lane, and now there's another one that wants to be donated to us that's in that same vicinity. So we'll be talking about that later. I just didn't want to confuse these two. This is one that was from before. Now, the closing will be coming up, and I just need the authority to execute the closing, so then we can go ahead and get the money coming back to us from FEMA. Is that an accurate explanation?
That's correct.
Okay. So with that, is there a motion to approve? Mr. Snipes, second. Mr. Washington. Any other questions about that? Okay. All right. It'll be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Lejas.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Ms. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under finance, if I could get this first item, the title read into the record, please.
Ordinance authorizing the issuance of corporate purpose tax anticipation warrants 2019 and tort purpose tax anticipation warrants 2019 in one or more series in anticipation of the collection of taxes levied for the year 2018 and payable in the year 2019 by the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois for corporate and tort purposes.
So first off, can I get a motion to approve? Mr. Lejes, a second. Mr. Byrne. This one was sent out in the packet, and I want to make sure everybody understands kind of our thought behind this. And, Steve's here to answer any specifics on the process, but you may remember that, when, a lot of things lined up for this. We were going to do our tax anticipation warrants to the tune of $2.5 million. right at the beginning of this. That's normally what we would have done to get us through that time period between January and when taxes start coming in, because we still are cash poor, even though we probably sit today as almost break even in the general fund, which is a big slug that we've done here in a short 2 years, but we still don't have a lot of cash. So that process was underway, and then the government shut down. And that was about $1 million a month, Steve, roughly, we get from the feds, plus other grants that we get from the federal government as well that support, whether it's people in the state's attorney's office, I believe, and other things. Nothing like the $1 million that was being withheld. So we had to shift gears completely and take a look at, well, what if this lasts a year? And, you know, thank goodness it stopped, but there is no guarantee that it's not going to come back again. So we continued with the process, because once you have the papers drawn up or in that process, you basically, you know, those are billable hours for lawyers. So yeah, look at him smile. You say billable hour to a lawyer, he smiles. So we continued with the process because we wanted to make sure that we had access. We're not pulling in these tax anticipation warrants above the 2.5 until we need them. So we won't be paying interest until we need them. But we wanted to make sure that we had the authority to do so as things change. This plan, as Mr. Kinzinger brought up in the Finance Committee, you know, what is the plan? The plan is this will get us to November, October, November, roughly, if there is a shutdown for that time period. Then we have some hard decisions to make at that point, and we will address those as they come up. But this will get us through the tax season and will only be accessed as needed. And those types of discussions will happen in the Finance Committee meeting. So is there anything I missed on that, Steve? Is there any specific questions for Steve in this process? He's been working on this and our yearly audit with the, you know, getting that ready as much as he can. It's been consuming us because it was a real problem. So please, he's here. Ask questions if you have any. None? Are we ready to vote? Okay, that's a roll call vote then.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakula.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. The next item, if we could read that title into the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the County Board Chairman to execute an agreement with Menard Consulting Incorporated.
That one I first need a motion to approve. Mr. Hess, second. Mr. Fairfield, is there any questions about this? I had some people ask me, why are we hiring an actuary? And there are some requirements that we do so. Steve would be happy to answer that question. Steve, you want to explain why we do this every couple of years? And what we have done as far as analyzing the cost of those, bidding it out, if you will?
Yeah, this is a requirement, excuse me, for GASB 75 as part of our year-end audit requirement. We have to do it every 2 years. We did bid this out a few years ago, and Menard Consulting has done a great job with it and continues to do that, and it was recommended on from the Finance Committee to go forward.
Any questions about that, the actuarial study? Mr. Kinzinger.
What's the difference between that and our year-end audit, this outside audit? What does he look for that the year-end doesn't?
It's actually included in the year-end audit. It's a part of the requirements of for its post-employment benefits, an actuarial study of post-employment benefits.
Okay. Just to make sure that number is accurate every 2 years. Anything else? Alrighty, that's a roll call vote then.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling. Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item. If you could read that title in the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois. Property tax abatement for tax year 2018 payable in 2019 to be abated in its entirety.
First, a motion to approve this abatement. Mr. Byrne, Mr. Legess. This is the one where, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, that if we don't abate this, then the health department's not eligible for the grants. We have to abate this every year. This is the health department grant. Want to make sure that I describe that accurately.
This is related to the bond payment, the health department bond, and it's abated so that it doesn't go on the tax levy.
And okay, so that it would cause problems for the other funding that they get.
Right, and yes, because they're so heavily grant funded,
correct.
It would filter into that part.
So it's not that much money, but it's just a procedural step we have to do every year to keep them clean. So have a motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call vote.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Zenz. Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Last item under finance. Read that title, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the county board chairman to execute an agreement with DevNet Incorporated.
Need a motion to approve. Mr. Carrico, second. Mr. Payton. Any questions about that? We kind of vetted that pretty deeply in community service and finance. All right, roll call vote.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Smith. Mr. Swanson. Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye, motion carries. Under highways and buildings, the concurring resolution, can I get a motion to waive the reading and accept as, sorry, Mrs. Peters, Ms. Polk? Those are just paying the bills. It's something we've done. So I just want to make sure if there's any questions about the highway bills, let me know. All right, roll call vote.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Byrne.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar.
Aye.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Zenz.
Aye.
Ms. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Swanson.
Aye.
Ms. Zakulo.
Aye.
Mr. Featherling.
Aye.
Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye, motion carries. Under other business, 2 openings on Mantino number 3 drainage district, 1 on the Mantino number 9 drainage, 1 on Minnie Creek drainage, 1 on Momenson Yellowhead drainage, 1 opening on Gar Creek drainage district, 1 resident opening on the Kankakee County Housing Authority Board. I believe that's forthcoming. And 1 opening on the Kankakee County Ethics Commission. We had a resignation, gentleman we had just had appointed, moving in Tennessee. So we have now another opening there. Ran him out. Now under old business, the only thing that I would mention is that, and I probably need Dell's input and maybe the state's attorney. A motion to reconsider was asked of this board, with stipulations that would be, in my opinion, improper because they haven't been heard by the ZBA. The only people that can make a motion to reconsider are the ones who voted against the resolution in the previous meeting, so it would have been full board last month on this. So it'd have to be someone who voted no to want to vote yes and be able to say why. And then it would take a second, but also the motion to reconsider has to be on the previous motion. And from what I heard, there were things that would require a new application. And I don't think it's proper to reconsider something that has been attempted to be altered. It would have to be applied for again. Now, Dell, in your opinion, is that an accurate assessment?
Yes, at the very least, because new evidence is being introduced, it should go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
So,
and since it's already been voted on, it's my opinion that a new application would be warranted.
and I hate to put you on the spot, but sometimes life happens to us. Mr. Rowe, is that something you'd have to research, or do you have an initial thought?
No, especially with the changes that they proposed, some setbacks, that should go back before
Okay.
PZA.
And so that would require a new application since we've already voted on it. So we'd be happy to reconsider under those conditions, that it goes back through the process again. So just want to make sure we address that. Any other old business? Mr. Legesse.
I just had a question on the previous one. If it goes back and there's a fee involved and they've already paid a fee, do they have to pay another fee because it's new, or do they get away?
They should pay another fee since the boards are having to meet again and reconsider everything.
Thank you.
That would be my opinion as well. We have some discretion there, but this would start all over again. It requires expense, and it's usually, believe me, it's not a money-making endeavor to take these applications.
It'd still be, you'd have to re-notify everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I asked the
Yeah.
question.
Yep. Any other old business? Any new business? Mrs. Polk?
I have to speak before Robert. I won't have any time.
Pull the microphone down, please, so we can hear.
I just want to thank everyone that came to the Dr. Martin Luther King Interfaith Prayer Breakfast. It was really, really, really great, and we had more people since I've been dealing with it, and such a variety of people. It was really nice. Thank you all.
Thank you. Smart move, by the way, Mr. Snipes.
Want to invite everybody out to the 39th annual Black History Program. As you know, we have almost about 200 kids in the program. Tickets are just $5. I will say you have to get there early because as anybody's been there knows that those 1,167 seats fill pretty quickly. Well, we always have a full capacity. Those of you all from the county that basically contribute towards the annual book for the scholarship fund, we thank you. Wherever last year, the year before, there was a Hispanic student that got it for $1,500. Last year, I believe it was $4,000, and we can't do that without the help of you all in the community. The time and date is this next Sunday, the 17th, and it is at 3 o'clock. I would say get there early because those seats, again, fill. The show will start at 3. So if you're there at 2:30, or I think the door's opening up about 2:15. So come out and celebrate with us. Thank you. That's at the Dr. K. Green Auditorium, which is KCC, not KCC, LCC. So it's in the Lincoln Cultural Arts Building in the Dr. K. Green Performing Arts Center.
Okay. Would there be a motion? Mr. Legesse, what would that motion be, sir?
I'd like to adjourn the meeting.
I have a motion to adjourn. Mr. Hess?
Second.
Hess and Legesse? Sorry, that's a thing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Have a good day.